Hello, I'm Lee Coffin, Dartmouth Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid, and I'm here with my colleague Dino Koff, the Director of Financial Aid. And we're really excited to be spending the next hour with you answering your questions about college admissions, Dartmouth more generally, financial aid, the weather, whatever it is you'd like us to talk about as we spend some time with you.
It's going to be some fun times.
It's going to be some fun times. So we already have our first question. And it comes from Tu, who asks, what is the early decision result date? So we are deep in the process of reviewing the early decision files. We begin our committee deliberations later this week, and the goal is to release our decisions on Wednesday, December 14th. And the first members of the class of 21 will be known.
Exciting day, definitely. A financial aid question. We like that.
Yeah.
From Emma from Delaware. How does financial aid work at Dartmouth? Now, I could spend probably 2 hours speaking about this. This is exciting, but we do try to make it as easy as possible. And on our website is a checklist for people that applicants can log on. We expect students to file, if they're U.S. citizens, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, the profile, and we would like your parents' taxes and your taxes if you file. And as we said, we try to make it as easy as possible because sometimes dealing with money and numbers gets people stressed out. But it's a really easy checklist to be able to go through, submit your documents. If you're an international student, you don't have to do the FAFSA. Again, we have 2 clear paths that on our website people can check out and apply for aid. 100% of the money is need-based, which means you do a great job marketing yourself, your GPA, your SATs, your recommendations, your extracurriculars, all that stuff is awesome, and it stays with Lee and admissions, and we go straight on the financial aid numbers. And so all of our money is need-based, and Dartmouth doesn't have merit scholarships.
Yeah. All right, our next question comes from Gordon in New Mexico. So joining us before dinner. Gordon says, I haven't visited because I live so far away. What's it like in Hanover? It's a really great question. And Gordon, I am a newcomer to Hanover myself. I moved here this past summer and have found it surprisingly cosmopolitan and lively. And when I was interviewing almost a year ago, I was wondering what would it be like to live in a college town. And I have really loved being in this beautiful space where the campus itself is dynamic, there's lots going on, the town that's connected to campus has great energy to it. I was talking to a student a couple of weeks ago from northern New England, and I asked how his first year was going, and he said, it's so great to be in the big city, which was funny, but it's relative to what you're used to. But Hanover is definitely a place framed by nature, as our provost often says, where the mountains and the Connecticut River are really close by, and you get this really striking sense of natural beauty. But nestled between the mountains and the river is this really dynamic little college town that has a lot going on. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, you've lived here longer than I have.
I have. I think this place is definitely amazing, and there's a lot of stuff that happens, and the community is great, but the campus offers a lot, which is awesome.
Yeah. So our next question comes from Isabel in Texas, and she wants to know how important are SAT and ACT scores. So let me use this as offer a preamble before I answer that question. So Dartmouth requires one, not both. So students can submit either the SAT or the ACT and have the option of also submitting SAT2 subject tests. But for the big test, as students like to call it, SAT, ACT, interchangeable. We don't have a preference. If you submit both, we will use whichever one is higher. And the way we know that is that our computer has a concordance table that tells the admission officer ACT stronger result than SAT or vice versa. And that's the one that goes into your record and the one we see. And follow whichever one you think is the best format for you to give us your results. All right. Christos from Chicago. What advice would you have in order to stand out in the supplemental essays? So I just wrote a blog about this, so after we're done, if you want to go on the Dartmouth admissions website, you'll see a blog called Celebrate Your Voice, and it's some thoughts about how you use the supplement to bring forward your narrative and your voice, your personality in a more deliberate way. So at Dartmouth, we asked you to answer 2 questions. The first is required of everybody. It's in 100 words or less. It quotes Dr. Seuss, who's Dartmouth class of 25, and the places you'll go line from one of his more famous books. And we wonder, what is it about Dartmouth that inspires you to apply? How do you see our program, our curriculum, culture, social experience helping you go where you think you'd like to be at this point? So that's the first question. And the second question, we give everybody a choice. There's 6 different options. You choose one, answer it in 300 words or less. Take these 2 together. You probably text more words than that in a day. So it's not an essay. It's a long paragraph that gives you a way of sharing some additional insights with us. So we have a question that says, Kermit the Frog famously lamented, "It's not easy being green." Discuss. We have another question, which is a quote from the novelist Henry James, reflecting on the value of kindness. And it says, share a moment when kindness informed your actions. We have one that's proven to be popular in the ED pool, which is celebrate a moment of outstanding teaching and the way it's shaped the way you think about that subject as you apply to college. And so all of these options, and there's a couple of others, are ways of saying, bring a little bit more of your personality into this file. Let us understand what makes you happy, what makes you tick, what makes you think forward about your goals, where have you come from. If you're a punk rocker, tell us that. If you are a political activist who worked on one of the presidential campaigns, tell us that. What we're looking for in the supplement is not a right-wrong. It's a deeper definition of your persona, so that as we move into the part of our process where we're shaping the class and really giving it a broad personality, the question we're asking is, what voice do you bring to this group of 1,125 students who are drawing together as Dartmouth's class of 21? So Tessa Kiri wants to know, do I need the writing portion of the ACT in order to apply? Yes, the writing portion is required for those of you submitting the ACT. Aaron wants to know, are interviews required and how do I get one? So Aaron, the way this works is you will, once you apply, you will get contacted by one of our alumni interviewers who are located worldwide, and they will reach out and invite you to have an alumni interview. It's not required. About 80% of our pool typically has one, but that's totally up to you. And it's really an opportunity for you to sit down with someone, have a conversation, learn more about Dartmouth and their experience at the college, but also bring your kind of personal piece into the mix in a more direct way than just what you've written or had other people write about you. All right, next one's for Dina.
We got the financial aid. Life is good. Mariah from Connecticut. My parents are divorced. How will this affect my financial aid application? So great question, Mariah. We actually get that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And something to do is, just so you know, it's the same process in terms of filling out. You'll still have the FAFSA to apply. You'll use to apply for financial aid, the free application for federal student aid. You'll do that with your custodial parent, and you'll submit that. But the profile will ask for your non-custodial parent, and they have definitions to help people decide which family member is custodial and what is non-custodial. One great thing about Dartmouth Financial Aid is that we're accessible, and so many times we get questions from parents who are filling out forms and wanting help navigating the process, and it is an easy phone call or an email away that we can help help you fill out the forms or answer the questions. Every situation is unique, and there are different text boxes on these forms. Also, emails that we receive, we encourage you to tell us the situation, because not all situations are the same. And so if you think you have a unique situation, we would love for you to share that so we can help navigate and get the best financial aid package.
Right. Okay, Sophia from Quebec. It's our first international question. Asks, if I studied 1 or 2 years of English before applying to Dartmouth, do I need to take the TOEFL? So TOEFL, or the test of English as a foreign language, is required of all applicants for whom English is not the first language. Now, if you've studied in an English-speaking classroom, this is less of an urgent issue. But if you live in a country where English is not the native language, or it's not the native language of your family, then the TOEFL exam gives us a way of understanding your ability to perform in an English-speaking classroom. So it's measuring your listening skills, your reading skills, your writing skills, your oral skills, so that we're trying to guarantee for you that when you get here, you are you can listen and respond and perform in a fast-paced English language curriculum. So, if you think it's not necessary, you'll score really well. If your English experience is so strong, it's probably not going to be a factor for you either way. But for those of you for whom English is still a second language, that's the point of the TOEFL. Okay, Kevin asks, SAT 2 subject tests are recommended, not required. What does that mean? So what it means is you have a choice. We, like I said, require the SAT or the ACT, and you have the option of submitting 2 subject tests of your choice if you think they're a useful way of showing your mastery of that particular subject. So which 2, that's up to you. Whether you include them or not, that's up to you. Where it's helpful is it gives us a way of looking at your performance and comparing you across a national, international landscape of students who took a similar course. So maybe you got a B+ in your biology course, but the teacher had a really aggressive, tough grading scale, and that B+ was hard-earned and you learned a lot. The subject test gives you a way of saying, look, my 750 shows that I've got a pretty deep understanding of biology based on this exam. So that's how we use it. It's a way of cross-checking your grade and what you learned in a way that crosses high schools. Because when we pull together the class, there will be hundreds of high schools represented in our first-year class, and our job, besides just admitting you, is to certify for our faculty that you're comparably prepared, and that's one of the ways we help ensure that for the faculty.
Greg from Miami asks, does financial aid go abroad with you?
It's like a passport.
It is. Life is good. So great question. And I'm excited to answer that our goal here is for you, once admissions opens the door, Our job is to help keep the door open and fund your Dartmouth experience. And part of the Dartmouth experience is study abroad. And whether that's abroad, I should say study away from Hanover, because we have many different terms that you can do both domestically and internationally. And if there are programs that you're going to study, our aid travels with you, so that you know that if London is going to cost an extra $1,100 compared to your term in Hanover, with airfare and maybe housing differences, know that that financial aid will travel with you. So if you're an aided student, you can still have those same experiences as you study abroad. And it's really important to know that this Dartmouth experience that you're applying for has so many different options, and we want to make sure that the aid is there to help you achieve all these experiences and have some great times.
Okay, Pete wants to know, what can I do to make my application stand out? Is there a specific thing I should be writing my essay about? There's no correct answer to this question. So your application and the essays or short responses that you prepare should focus on you. Don't wonder, what would the guy in the bow tie like to read? It's not about what I like to read. It's about showing your personality, your story. You know, when we put the class together, I mean, one of the goals is, because it's a residential experience, is to create a peer group that will be interesting, that will have lively conversations in class, in the dorms, in the dining hall. So one of the things we're reading for as we meet you in the application is, you know, what perspective, what voice do you add to the student body? So as you're thinking about the different questions and the way you might answer them, each piece of the application introduces another part of you that I don't know what I'm going to find until I start reading. And so, you know, how do you stand out is to be authentic, to be clear about what you've done, what you're thinking about now, what your hopes are going forward, how Dartmouth can help you explore these ideas. So if you have a really specific interest already in an academic area, are you talking about that? I read one the other day where the student really lightly mentioned some really interesting interests in archaeology and Latin America and women's studies, but then never talked about it in the rest of the application. And when I got to the end of the file, I thought, I wish that had been a topic somewhere, because it was intriguing when I saw it mentioned, but it hadn't been developed. And I think you want to be asking yourself, as the reader moves through this file, what is she learning about me? As we distill the application into our evaluation form, what do you want us to know and remember? And I often say that students, my work is like being a lawyer representing you in court, and the jury is the admission committee, and my job is to present your evidence to them and get them to say yes. And I can only make your case if you give me the details that helps me make it. If you leave me asking questions, or if my fingers aren't moving on the keyboard as I read, then that's a missed opportunity for bringing your candidacy to life in an important way. All right, so Phil wants to know about transfer applicants. Do they have interviews? No. The interviewing round is for first-year students only. Wow, Northern Ireland.
Right.
Yeah. So Francesca from Belfast.
Hello,
hi,
Belfast.
hello, Belfast. In the admission process, do you prefer to see a well-rounded student with a range of interests, or one that is passionate in one particular area of study or activity? Either is great. Again, back to my answer to Pete, if you have represented yourself authentically, whether you're well-rounded or deep, that's going to be compelling as we come to meet you. So give you an example of kind of a more specific, Maybe you're a cellist, and you spend a significant number of time playing the cello, practicing, performing with an orchestra or an ensemble, and you write about music, and you're starting to think about the way the brain and music interact. That's a really specific narrative that focuses on something really important and passionate. That's great. You might be a cellist in the orchestra and an ensemble who's also doing community service and working part-time at a coffee shop and volunteering, and the hours per week might be even across those things. That's well-rounded, and that's also compelling because you're moving among different ways of being engaged. So the key piece here is engagement, not volume. It's not you've done 6 things, you've done 2. It's what's the depth? What's the enduring commitment? Do you have passion? Does it, when you wake up in the morning, do you say, Dino, I'm so excited I get to go to soccer camp today, or I'm working on this mural in my studio, and I'm so excited to have it in the gallery. The answers can go in lots of different directions. It's how you share them with us that helps us get excited about what you're excited about. Gina, I didn't do as well in high school early on, but have improved since then. Is Dartmouth out of reach? No, I mean the word, I haven't used it yet, but the word we use in reviewing your file is holistic. So we're looking at you as the sum of lots of different components, and your transcript is a big component, and your performance from 9th grade through your senior year is something we study quite carefully. And you're high school students, and some of you will get off to a slower start than others. And what's important as you move from 9 to 12 is as you get into your junior year and your senior year, have you found your academic stride? What courses are you taking? How are you doing? What are your teachers saying about you? And I think to your question about a slower start, is there a teacher who can speak to what you were like in the classroom in 9th grade and what you're like today, and how that transformation came to pass? That's where you use the teacher rec as a really important supporting example of your growth. All right, Fernando asks, how do you assess students with various high school educations? What if I went to multiple high schools? So this is common, actually, where a student will start in one school, they have family moves, or they'll leave a public institution and maybe go to a boarding school or an independent school, and you might have 9 and 10 in one place and 11 and 12 in another. Lots of different combinations. We'll look at you in those respective components. So 9 and 10 at school number 1, 11 and 12 at school number 2. What was the translation from one to the other? Was it steady performance? Was there a dip and then a rebound? No change. So don't worry about having multiple institutions, particularly when that choice wasn't yours. Either your family moved or you saw that a different academic experience. If you're moving around a lot because you've had some disciplinary issues, that's a different question that maybe we'll talk about later. But to the spirit of your question, multiple schools will be evaluated in each component piece. Okay. Priyav asks, to what extent is a student's aspirations contingent on getting admitted? Does my intended major matter? Your intended major matters to a degree. So I think most admission officers in a liberal arts college expect high school seniors to be broadly undecided. And I would say, as an academic advisor for many years, I hope you're broadly undecided, that you come into the first year, start experiencing our courses, and remain open to subjects that your high school might not offer. But having said that, most of us have organic parts of the curriculum that flow out of our own ways of learning and who we are. I was a humanities person who really favored English and history and languages. I had a friend when I got to college who was math, economics, much more quant than I was. If you have that as a high school senior, tell us that. So when the Common App asks, what are your academic interests? There's not, again, a right answer or wrong answer. You can write undecided and just leave it at that. Or you can say religion, chemistry, political science, Italian. You're undecided. But you've given the admission officer some really interesting ways of learning about you and what you're thinking about, and do those interests come back in other parts of your application? What are you thinking about? And if you really do know, as you move around your college search and at this last stage of it over the next few weeks, what you should be thinking about is which colleges have the programs you're most inclined to study. So if you're thinking, I want to be a marine biologist, you should be looking for programs that offer that. If you're an engineer, you love robotics, and you've been taking things apart and putting them back together again since you were 5, and you're looking at the Thayer School, you're not admitted to Dartmouth into the Thayer School of Engineering. You declare a major in that by the end of your sophomore year. But if you have an engineering instinct in the file, and you're talking about, I read one this morning where the student was talking about chemical engineering and really hoping to use that to find renewable energy sources and water purification systems. That was really specific. It kept coming up. The teacher talked about a research project he had done. That was great. So again, there's not a correct answer to this. If you really are undecided, I would say poke that a little bit and ask, really? Drama or physics? And if the answer is, oh, no, never physics, then, are you an art student? More broadly, what division of the curriculum are you leaning towards? That's helpful. Dina's turn again.
Right. Yeah, Daniel. All right. So Daniel from Montana. I come from a middle-class family. What does tuition-free mean for Dartmouth financial aid? So we have a financial aid initiative for families who make under $100,000 and have typical assets. And what this means is that for families that qualify, and this year in the class of 2020, we had 203 students who qualified in the class, which is great. And the average average scholarship for these students was over $59,000. So with tuition being in the $49,000 range, we're covering fees and part of room and food for families, and so it's a great initiative. And so it's you just apply for financial aid like you were going to apply for. You don't have to apply for this initiative if you meet the criteria of making under $100,000 with typical assets. We place you in, and you qualify for this initiative.
So, Dina, let me ask you a follow. I'm going to jump in and say, Lee asked. So Lee from Connecticut, Lee from Hanover said, so twice you referenced typical assets.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Typical assets, Lee, we don't publish typical assets. So we would like families, for instance, if there's a family that has $74,000 and has $1.8 million in assets, that's probably not typical for a family making $74,000. So that person still may qualify for aid, but may not receive, as I said, the average was $59,000. They may not get that type of a grant. But the initiative does cover 100% of tuition, which is great. Yeah. All
right, Jake, is there a specific date planned to announce acceptances for early decision applicants? December 14th. Be there.
Oh, all right. So Candy has heard the term prior. What does this all mean?
Yeah.
So I made visits this year to New York City and to Los Angeles and to Boston, some different schools and different programs that Dartmouth put on. And I was amazed at how many families, counselors, students understood prior, because it has rocked the financial aid world. Basically what that means is President Obama, about 18 months ago, signed an executive order that changed the tax year for financial aid. So for instance, for the award year 16-17, that's the year we're in right now, students would apply for financial aid, and they would use their 15 taxes. So remember, you're applying for financial aid as a first-year student in February of 2015. Well, how many families have taxes done? Not too many. And so as life is good, as the year went on, you would get more families who would have taxes done, and they would send them in. But it was always a stress for families because so many times they weren't they were filing extensions. Well, now this is supposed to make it easier, and so far families have the feedback has been very positive. Yeah. Where families, instead of using prior year taxes, are now using prior.
It's like 2 years ago,
correct,
instead of last year.
So life is good that families now hopefully have their 2015 taxes done. October 1 this year, the FAFSA database opened up, so you can go to the FAFSA website. The profile opened up, and if you have 2015 taxes done, you can apply for financial aid. And you don't have to wait to get your next year, the prior year taxes, because we're using what they say prior.
Or 2 years ago.
Yes.
So my tech helpers here wanted just to let you know that we're getting lots of great questions. We're going to try and get as many of them in as we can tonight by 8. If we don't answer your question, we will post a blog later this week where we will put out answers to try and cluster some of the questions together and put out some answers. So short commercial break there just to say, if we don't get to every question, you're not done.
I mean, people are hitting home runs with these questions.
Yeah,
these are phenomenal.
Zoe wants to know, what system does Dartmouth use to go through all of those applications most efficiently and effectively? So that's a question I get a lot from parents who say things like, so you get 21,000 applications and you have a set number of days to read them. And my answer to my friends always say, you know, I disappear into a bunker and don't come back out until April. And it's true. And what happens is we just start reading, and the system we use is we do a read first by geographic territory. So every admission officer is assigned a part of the world. And so we spend the first phase doing preliminary reads, setting up your file, understanding your academic background. And we go in and we do a full read holistically, all the pieces of your file, summarizing it, giving it evaluations, evaluative comments. And then as we're doing that, the reader starts to direct the files. Some come directly to me because they're quite strong, and the reader is saying, this is a clear admit, and the dean can see it and just sign off. Some of them go the other way, whereas we're reading, it's clear this person isn't competitive, and they get routed to another queue where they're evaluated, and a decision is made to stop the evaluation. But most of them go through a full read, a second full read, and then wind up in committee. And so we're sitting at one of the committee tables right now. I don't know if it's visible on the screen, but we sit around a table like this, and we talk about you one by one. That's what happens when the early decision starts on Friday. We will be presenting, like I said, to our peers, hoping to get a 2/3 vote from the committee to say yes. And it's labor intensive, Zoe. It's the best way to describe reading season to someone who's not an admission officer would be to imagine studying for final exams for 13 weeks in a row. It's my favorite part of the admission process, but it's a lot of work. I mean, we read and we evaluate and we meet and we read and we evaluate and we meet, and then it starts going over to financial aid, and they start doing their work, which is separate.
So you're reading?
I'm reading now, yeah. So I came in earlier today. I did not look like this when I first arrived for this chat, thinking chat was typing, not talking. And I look like a lumberjack. And Mariah, who's our social media coordinator, sent me home and said, "Go put on a suit." So I'm back, but I was in more reading wear today as I was trying to finish my own reads for early decision and get things done. So it's it's not very efficient, Zoe. That's the sad, long-winded answer. It's because students are complicated. Dartmouth is very selective. We have to make really fine distinctions among a big pool of people who are compelling. And so the efficiency goes out the window as we read you one by one and make some informed decisions about it. But there's a system that we use, and it's always a happy day when we hit the send button and we're done. Okay, Anna. Does Dartmouth encourage students to pursue double majors? I have a great passion in both the arts and sciences and would love to make the most out of my interests. Yep, you can do a double. Dartmouth allows you to do something called a modified major, where in your example of art and science, let's say you're doing studio art and, I don't know, biology. You might do biology modified with studio art and look at, anatomical drawings perhaps, or looking at the history of anatomical drawings through time. There's actually a course that we offer in medical anthropology that does that. But you're able to take two disciplines and combine them, not into a double so much as a major that's got a more specific flavor to it. One of our colleagues in admissions was a history major modified by religion, and his focus was on the history of the Middle East, and his history coursework kind of did a deeper dive into Islam and the role of the religion in the Middle East. He was a history major, but he had a more specific focus on what he did. So that's a great option that we offer.
All right, Ellen from Lymington. How much money do you give out? That's a great question, Ellen. $95 million we give out in scholarship aid. We don't just give that to one student. We sort of spread it out, which is a good thing. Our average scholarship is around $47,000, so just below the full cost of tuition, which is great. Mm-hmm. And this year we had about 46% of our first year class receive free money. And so
as opposed to
loans. So it's actually it's wonderful to be able to be need blind, and even though we're friends, we really don't talk about students in the sense of we are need blind, so we don't look at the financials until the admissions decisions are made. And then and the other part of that is we meet full demonstrated need, and we're able to do that with the type of budget that we have for scholarships.
Mary Alice wants to know, should I have a coach, employer, Dartmouth alum write for me? Sure. If we require recommendations from your guidance or college counselor, a teacher. We have an optional peer recommendation, and so some of the people Mary Alice is thinking about could be a peer rec. I mean, peer does not just mean a biological peer. It doesn't have to be your classmate or a sibling. It could be a sibling. Could be a coach. It could be a coworker. It could be your priest. It can be anyone that you see in that kind of broadly defined peer capacities. That's another option we offer, which I love, because when I get to the peer rec component of the read, the way your peers describe you makes you 17 in a really vivid way, and they're endearing and earnest as they present you as a candidate for admission, and often show us a part of you that might not have bubbled out of the file. Sometimes in the alumni interview it comes out too, but so the peer rec is another opportunity for you to have someone who's not a teacher or a guidance counselor kind of offer some words of wisdom on your behalf. What is the one part of the application that prospective students often overlook? That's from Michelle. That's a great question, Michelle. So I think there's two ways to answer this. I think the biggest boogeyman that haunts you as prospective applicants is procrastination.
Well, say that again. Say that again. The parents are
the
watching.
parents.
Yeah.
The biggest boogeyman that haunts prospective applicants is procrastination. What does that mean? You wait until right before the deadline and treat the application as if it's a text message as opposed to a document. And they're different, and you can't do it well if on December 31st you're pounding out answers to these questions with the clock ticking towards the deadline. I never did that well. I didn't like all-nighters in college. I'm just not I'm not an owl. But so procrastination is one thing. It's not an overlooked. Oh, I guess the deadline would be what's overlooked. Is people don't realize how quickly it approaches. But the piece of the application that I think has the biggest impact that we don't all talk about that much is the teacher recommendation. And a person who has spent many days with you in a classroom sharing an intellectual journey, that's often a very rich opportunity. But not just say, I gave Dino a B+, as opposed to an A. But this is how he behaved in my classroom. Bummer, what kind of questions did you ask? What kind of papers did you write? What was the class like when you were absent? I mean, that teacher recommendation and so you have the choice. Who gets that form for you? We advise you to use a junior year or senior year teacher. If you insist on someone from freshman or sophomore year, I would say, has that person been in the classroom with you since then or kept in touch with you? Because what you've learned and who you are today is different than it was 2 or 3 years ago. But I think the teacher recommendations would be an overlooked asset. And I think the supplement is something that has more power than you might realize. Those questions that each college asks, in addition to the Common App, are designed by that admission office to elicit from you something really specific to this place. So when you read the questions, what we're asking is something that's important. So that would be my 2 cents. Chris. What if my school doesn't provide quarter grades if I'm an ED applicant? So Chris, if you don't have quarter grades, which we just requested from your guidance counselor, you obviously can't be punished for that. We welcome a progress report from your senior year. If you don't have any grades, we can't evaluate them. We will ask, after, let's be optimistic, you get accepted, we will ask ED admits to submit their mid-year grades, and we will verify your performance at that step, and we will do that again at the end of your senior year. And the letter that will have my name on it says this offer is made with the expectation that you maintain the level of academic achievement that distinguished you as an applicant. That's called the escape clause. So if your grades falter between the point of admission and matriculation, we will revisit you and say, hey, let's talk.
Yeah, that's not fun.
You don't want that. You don't want that. So we do, for all of you who just went, oh no, we do follow up and want to ensure that senioritis hasn't grabbed you.
All right, Josh.
Dan.
The questions are flying in. So this is great, everybody. So thank you very much.
I feel like we're on a game show.
This is great. Let's go to Dan on line 2.
Yeah.
Dan from New Jersey.
We're getting punchier at the second half hour, aren't we?
I filed my FAFSA, but I haven't submitted my CSS profile. Is it too late? So Dan, that's a good question. And if you're an ED applicant, Dan, definitely file the profile ASAP, because we are starting to look at files, and I think that's really important that that all of that material is complete. If you are an RD applicant, it's great to get it done. You have
That's
a
regular
little bit of time.
decision.
Excuse me. If you are in regular decision pool, I know the admissions limit.
Yeah.
This is pretty
Yeah.
good, right? So you definitely have a little bit of time, but you do want to get it in because you do want your file complete. And so hopefully once you're admitted, you're ready to go on the financial aid side.
Peter wants to know if we consider geographic diversity in the admission process. Yes. This is a national, this is an international student body. So one of the goals, not the top goal, but one of the factors we look at is where were you raised and to what degree has that informed the person you are. So it's not just a zip code. There's not a certain quota. This many from this state and this many from this country, but when we look at the geographic background, how has that place informed who you are? There's another way to think about that is there's my last institution, we had a question that said there's a Quaker saying, "Let your life speak," and what does the place where you were raised say about who you are? I think that Quaker phrase is a really rich opportunity to think about, I grew up in this city and this is the way it informed my perspective about sociology or economics or urban planning or architecture. I grew up in Montana in this big open place, and how does that inform my understanding of environment, of agriculture, of Native American history? I mean, what do you bring into your story based on where you were raised? How prominent is the Greek life at Dartmouth? Greek life is a part of our undergraduate experience. I would describe it as an element of a broad, eclectic social experience for students who choose to be part of that experience. I know many colleagues here at Dartmouth who were in a frat or a sorority, and it was a deep, meaningful experience with a peer group that I don't think they would trade. And then I know others. One of our tour guides who's working over the break is not, and he said, I move freely among all the different social groups on campus. I participate in the Greek experience when I choose to, and when I don't, I'm not hindered by it. So I think, like lots of places where there are Greek elements to the undergraduate experience, you can make of it what you wish, but you're not defined by it or its absence. Nick wants to know how the size of his school impacts the admission process. What if I go to a large school with hundreds of students in the senior class versus what if I go to a school with a very small senior class? It's not really an issue that we spend a lot of time talking about. I mean, if you, just to use one of the statistics that the guidebooks use, the top 10%, obviously the top 10% of a class of 60 is a smaller cohort than the top 10% of a class of 600. So, there's differences of scale. For students in smaller places, sometimes that brings more limited opportunities by way of the curriculum or extracurriculars. And so we note that when we're looking at the other parts of your file. So, if your senior class is really tiny and they can't offer many advanced courses because there just aren't enough students to run the course, we can't expect you to have taken that course. Some of the bigger places will have a more plentiful set of options, and we look at students' choice in that land of plenty and wonder, what did you take relative to what was available? So another way to answer this question is you are each evaluated one by one in a local context. So we start reading, I mentioned we're territory managers first. When we go into each file, the first thing we're doing is, by way of setting up the file, is doing what we call the context box. So, where are you? What's your family background? What percentage of seniors in your school typically go to a four-year college? What kind of courses are offered? I mean, we're documenting the landscape before we evaluate you in that landscape. So that's, size would be one of the factors we look at when we're setting that up. Gabe wants to know, what's the best part about Dartmouth, and is Dartmouth gay friendly? So I'll answer the second part first. So Dartmouth has a gay dean of admissions.
I would say they're friendly.
And we're friendly. What's the best part about Dartmouth? I have found it to be, as a newcomer, a place with a really rich classroom experience. I mean, the excellence of undergraduate teaching at Dartmouth is superb. And that's what attracted me to this place as an admission officer. It's what comes back to me when I talk to students and alums about what they experienced. It's dynamic, it's experiential, it's personal, it's interdisciplinary. So it teaches you how to move between the traditional windows and say, how do these things blend together? What would be your favorite?
I would definitely say that I've never seen a place offer so much.
Mm-hmm.
This is just incredible. Socially, academically, it's just, there's so many different opportunities for students to take advantage of, and I think it just creates an incredible environment.
Yeah. Nina, how does my racial, ethnic, cultural background factor into my admissions evaluation? So your personal background, however broadly or narrowly you want to define it, is one factor among many. So just like geography, as we're meeting you, one of the questions we're asking is, who are you? And how do you bring that background, that perspective into this student body? And how does it inform the way you think, what you want to study? So it's not, there's not a piece of you that is the most important part. I mean, we don't say, well, she's from Ohio, or she's Hispanic, or she's female or male or transgender, or those questions are not the salient piece. It's how does that collection of parts of you inform the rest of you? And the goal, really, when you think about it, you're the class of 21. Our goal as we set up the first year class is to create an undergraduate experience that to the best of our ability replicates the world you will join when you graduate and you start working and raising a family or traveling. Like, what's the interconnectedness, the multicultural dimension of it? How do we make this undergraduate experience as rich and dynamic as the world that surrounds us? So that's how your personal story kind of comes into this conversation.
Hey, it's an advertisement time.
Yeah. Several questions about essay writing and other topics. So essays. Your essay, we'll talk about the Common App essay, the long form personal statement. One piece of writing goes to multiple institutions. Don't overthink it. Don't overwrite it, or my two don'ts. Use that space to draft a statement that introduces you to us on whatever term you want us to know you. And the more people you show that document to, and the more edited or scrubbed it gets, it starts to lose your voice. So having someone edit your work, that's always helpful. But over-editing can sometimes disrupt the impact of a piece of writing that can often really add an important dimension to your candidacy. What are the best traditions at Dartmouth? It's from Aiden. Um,
I'm amazed how many traditions there are. Whether it's the pre-orientation trips, how students are constantly talking about that. People who are not water people and they ended up, or they're water people but not, they tried whitewater kayaking, or they did, for their first ever time they went hiking, and they talk about these experiences. And the amount of people that come back for homecoming, and they run around this huge bonfire, huge, and they're running around it, and it's just incredible.
There's a profound sense of place at Dartmouth that students and alumni really embrace. It's unlike anything I've experienced in my career before Dartmouth. This like deep, vivid affinity to Hanover, to the Upper Valley, which is the surrounding region, Vermont and New Hampshire, and the traditions that flow out of that. I mean, Dino's named a couple, but there are many.
The Winter Carnival is incredible, where people, you may hear it's 78 degrees and sunny year-round. That may not be the total truth. And but they have this frozen pond that they cut a big hole in, and one of the traditions are that people jump into this pond like a polar plunge, and it's.
Do you do it?
I watched it.
See, if Dino would be someone that would do a polar plunge.
Yeah, one day.
Not me. So Peter wants to know, how does Dartmouth promote student-professor interactions? So it's organic. 60+% of our classes have 20 students or fewer in them. So when you think about that, I mean, most of the courses you will take over the 4 years of your undergraduate experience are in a small room where it's a discussion-based, interactive learning experience. And the faculty-student relationship grows out of that place. You're not one of a couple of hundred people in a large lecture hall. We have those courses, but they're not the norm. What's more typical is this learning space where, just like Cheers, everybody knows your name. You're not anonymous at Dartmouth, and that size differential is a really important part of our identity. And you look at some of our peer institutions in the university scope, we're small relative to that. And that gives us the benefit of a really close student-faculty interaction that you can't force. It happens. As I've met faculty, I've been struck by how they are, they know their students. They can refer to specific people in specific classes and remember conversations and papers and multiple courses that students have taken with them. So that it goes back to what I said, the best part of Dartmouth. It's like this is a teaching-centered place.
It's not uncommon that you may, if you're a skier, be on a chairlift going up with somebody who just taught your class or taught your class last term, or you might be sitting at the Hop at a theater with your. I mean, the interactions are incredible. And those might be unplanned, but we're a small community. And there's also planned where faculty are having students over for dinner many times, and that's what the alums talk about a lot.
Pedro wants to know, as the new dean of admission, what is my vision, and how is it different? Oh, Pedro, that's hard. So my vision is not really the key piece here. My role at Dartmouth is to work on behalf of the faculty in arts and sciences and engineering to bring the best students from around the world to this campus to make that classroom experience I just described as powerful as we can make it. So that's the vision, I guess, which is I approach this work from a very faculty-centered, intellectually based place. But from your side, what I've always done in my career is really emphasize student narrative and the idea that you bring lots of different qualities to your undergraduate experience, your academic performance, critical, fundamental, non-negotiable. But what you do outside the classroom in a space like this also makes this the experience that it is. So your enthusiasm, your curiosity, your adventuresomeness, your kindness, your support for your peers are all things that make a college like Dartmouth work. So that's what I bring to the role. My new colleagues will tell you I'm making them read slowly and deeply and really bringing your story to the table so that when we meet you, we know who we're meeting. And so that's just been my enduring philosophy. I was, I got into this work many years ago because I was the first in my family to go to college, and I knew that college, and not just college, but for me, a liberal arts college transformed my life. And so I see what it does when people have access to this kind of place. And so leading a team that does outreach, whether it's social media like tonight, whether it's we're in your hometown visiting a school, whether you're on campus and we're meeting you, how do we give you as much information about this college as we can so that you can make an informed decision about, is this the right fit for you? Can you see yourself here? And do we offer what you'd like to study? So Mariah, our director, is giving us the wrap it up.
This is phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
This has been
great. So again, there's a blog on our website that I wrote last week, offering some thoughts about adding your voice to your supplement and Common App. So take a peek at that. We'll be posting this video on Facebook later this week, as well as answers to some of the questions we didn't get to. Thanks for joining us. If it's dinner time, hope it's good. If it's homework time,
get it done.
Go to it. Okay, good night.